getting comfortable. And today we're going to be looking at getting comfortable in Babel, as hence the Genesis passage was read earlier. I want to begin by telling you a story about a policeman who pulled over this car who was driving down the wrong side of the motorway. And so the policeman said, well, why on earth are you driving down the wrong side of the motorway? And the man said, well, my wife said it was time for me to get out of my comfort zone. So I decided I was going to drive down the wrong side of the motorway. The policeman just smiled a little bit and said, well, not only are you now uncomfortable, but so is everybody else who's driving down this side of the road. We all get comfortable, very, very comfortable in our lives and our surroundings. And in Genesis chapter 11, we're going to see that's exactly what's happening here. It says the whole world had one language and a common speech. As people moved eastward, they found a plain in Shinar and settled there. So these are the descendants of Ham, who had no desire to be separated. They didn't stay in one place, but notice that they moved together. It's interesting, in the Hebrew text, the word people moved, see the word people moved, literally means pulling up tent pegs. So it gives us the idea there were nomadic people who lived in tents. And people back then lived in tents. They were shepherds, and these people were in search of pastures for their flock and for their herds. And they came to this place called Shinar and settled there. In other words, when they got to this place, they thought, this is perfect. Let's just settle here, and we don't have to do anything else. We don't have to go anywhere else. Just settle here. Well, they wanted to settle in. We'll see that's going to be a problem in a moment. Notice they found a plain, not an aeroplane. No. A plain, okay, a piece of ground type of thing. And that means there was no stone available there because it was on a plain. And so they had to make bricks. And remember the first city that was ever built in the Bible, you know who built that? Anybody? Cain. Cain was the first to build a city. And it's remarkable that these descendants of Ham have somehow learned the secret of how to make bricks. Remember, this is not far in after creation, yeah? It's not far after that. But how did they know how to make bricks? How did they know how to make tar? Well, I guess it's possible that they saw Cain's descendants doing it. That's one possibility. I personally believe that God gave them that knowledge. God gave them the knowledge and the ability to make bricks. Now, you might think, well, this is nothing new. Well, the Israelites were making bricks using straw in Egypt, if you remember, for the pyramids and things. But this was centuries after what we find here in Genesis 11. You see, these descendants of Ham know about, notice, baking bricks. And when you bake bricks, it makes them harder. And so, that's not all they did. You notice that they used tar. Now, tar, or bitumen as it's sometimes called, is an oily substance. And it actually makes things waterproof. It's actually the same substance that Noah used when he built the ark. And it's the same substance that Moses' mother used when she placed him in a basket to go into the River Nile. The Egyptians used this all the time for mummification because it preserved the dead body for a while. And so it's very popular. But again, all this traces back to Genesis 11. These guys have, and when you talk to people, I was playing golf a couple of months now with two of my friends, and they were talking about, the pyramids, they were so well built, they must have been built by aliens. And the implication is the further back in time you go, the more stupid people are. That's the idea. You didn't go back to the old caveman thing when people can't talk, but club your wife over the head with a stone or whatever, And I'm like, how can you come to that conclusion? People were very intelligent back then. They knew what they were doing. But what was it they wanted to build? The reason I asked that question is because people have come up with all kinds of crazy ideas about what it is they were trying to build. And please know, they weren't stupid enough to think, well, we're going to build a tower that's going to go all the way to heaven. They weren't that stupid. The text basically says, let us build a tower of a very great height. That's really is what it's all about. Now, the question I always wondered, well, who's behind all of this venture? Who's responsible for wanting to do all this and bring the people together? Well, again, if you go back to Genesis chapter 10, we find a man named Nimrod, who is a descendant of Ham. And the Hammonites may have been woefully lacking in the religious sense, but they were absolutely really intelligent and creative and inventive when it comes to other things, particularly in setting up the very first kingdoms. So here we see the start of it in Genesis 10, but they had this thought process, Nimrod, I'm going to build a world empire. That's what he wants to do. And so these ancient cities, or at least most of them, have actually been discovered today.
Yeah, exactly.
And there is one remarkable thing that they all have in common. Something unique to that part of the world. And you know what it is? It's basically a tower.
Yeah.
They have buildings that are described as a tower. Now, the proper name for these things is a ziggurats.
Yeah.
You may have seen these before. What they really are is an artificial mountain.
Yeah.
That's what it is. It's an artificial mountain. It's a mound built so high as to represent a mountain. The word ziggurat literally means mountain top. And within these things, as from Babel way onwards, when these were being built, because they weren't the only ones that were building them, but as you go forward, you'll see that inside there was enclosed tombs, there was places of worship, there was workshops, there was priestesses, all kind of things going on in these places as the years developed, but not at this moment in time. But what they were trying to do was to build a very high mound, if you wish, or a tower, and then we ask the question, well, why? Why would they want to do this? Well, it's not because they thought they could reach heaven, like I said, and it's not even so much about protection against the flood, in case there's another flood. Remember, Genesis 11 is coming straight at the back of the flood. So they're not trying to protect themselves just in case God says, let rain come down again type thing. They're not doing that. And so, obviously, if it had been to prevent another flood coming along, or in case another flood come along, then they wouldn't have built it on a plain. They would have built it on a mountain. But they didn't do that. Now notice here, two reasons are given. One, let us make a name for ourselves. And two, otherwise we'll be scattered all over the face of the earth. Now behind those ideas is the desire to unite themselves and create for themselves a world empire. They wanted to make a lasting impression in history, and as we know, when we go back through our history books, man's desire to glorify themselves has always been going on and on and on in one shape or form, hasn't it? But look how excited they are. Come, let us make bricks and bake them thoroughly. Come, let us build ourselves a city. See, this is all about making a name for themselves. This is all about pride and glory for themselves. The problem was they were ignoring God's plans and they were ignoring God's commandments and trying to form almost like a human coalition, but leaving God out of the picture. Now you're going to ask, well, where does it say all this in the text? Well, we're going to get to that in a second. But the point is that they didn't learn to trust God, they didn't learn to serve God, even after the lesson of the flood. We catch a little glimpse of it here, notice. Notice the insecurity in their voice. We want to do this, otherwise we're going to be scattered all over the face of the earth. So there's insecurity there. They're thinking, this is going to happen if we don't do this for ourselves type thing. And so the idea of building the tower was to act almost like a landmark, if you wish, pretty much like a lighthouse serves a sailor. The same sort of idea. So they wanted and needed something to guide them back to, I guess you'd call it base camp, if you wish, after searching for pastures, for their herds, and for their sheep. And so they wanted to get comfortable in the land, and so they built this tower, probably for protection and also for guidance. But notice something. God intervened. And we shouldn't take that expression there, the Lord came down, we shouldn't take that literally, okay? It's not literal, it's a Hebrew way of describing God acting in human fashion. Yeah. So it's used to help us understand that God is interested in what was going on with these people, and he's concerned about what they're doing. And obviously we're not to think that God needs to come down, because God sees everything. He knows everything. Nothing escapes God's attention. And notice again, we're reminded the people all spoke the same language. Again, the Hebrew text literally says this: of one lip and of words one. Which really means that both the language and the vocabulary and the pronunciation of words were the same. They used the same words, they spoke the same language, the same way, and God says, if these guys are left to themselves, it's going to lead them to even more ambitious, evil scheming. And notice here, come let us. People often talk about, oh, the Trinity doesn't exist, and especially in the Old Testament we don't see the Trinity. Well, what is this we're getting here? Let us, plural, yeah? So this is definitely the Godhead speaking here. Let us go down. We see it in Genesis, don't we? When God said, let us make man in our image. It's the same idea. So that there's definitely the Trinity is being taught here. And also notice the course that God, course of action that God is going to take here. He didn't destroy them. He didn't destroy their city. He didn't destroy their tower. He confused their language. Isn't that interesting? He made it impossible for them to communicate with one another, which effectively put an end to the scheming. If the people can't understand each other, then they're going to disperse all over the earth. It's like me standing here speaking in English to you right now, and 30% of you speak Chinese, and the other 30% speak Spanish, yeah? But you don't understand English. The chances are, if you don't understand English and don't understand a word I'm saying, and maybe that's the case because I'm Scottish, yeah? The chances are you're going to get up and go. Why? Because you haven't got a clue what I'm talking about. This is what's happening here. And so what we have here is the origin of foreign languages. You often wonder, where would the people get all these different languages? This is it, right here in Genesis 11. And like at the same time when all this is going on, I've been saying to you that they're disobeying God's command, and I'm saying, well, where's the proof of that? Well, notice here, when you go back to Genesis 9:1 and 9:7, the scattering of the people is going to fulfill God's original commandments to the descendants of Noah, that they be fruitful and multiply on the earth. Remember, that the earth is not that old at this point. There's not much of a population after the flood. Yeah, Noah and his family, and we're on a few centuries or 100 years or so after it. So there's not much of a population, and God needs them out there. So the Lord scattered them, but this doesn't mean they immediately scattered all over the earth. It means that those who speak the same language as somebody else got together and they established their own kingdom. So again, going back to analogy, if some of you guys were Chinese, you couldn't understand the word was saying, and so you got to go, you would go with all the Chinese-speaking people. You'd go with all the Spanish-speaking people, or all the English-speaking. That's what's happening here. And so families would rapidly multiply by doing this. They develop their own culture. They would develop their own distinctive biological and physical characteristics according to their environment. And you notice there, the city of the name Babel. Originally, Babel means gate of God, hence Tower to heaven, yeah? But as we see here, it got its name changed. It means confusion.
Yeah.
Now, bear in mind, all of this happened about 100 years, certainly not much more, after the flood. Okay? And this event teaches us that mankind hasn't learned the lesson from the past. Adam and Eve sinned and were punished. Cain sinned and was punished. The flood destroyed the ancient world, also a punishment of sin. And yet here, the descendants of Noah, leaving God out of their plans, are incurring punishment again. So what can we learn from all of this? Let me give you just a couple of, well, maybe three. Yeah, we'll go with three. Applications. Number one, God's ways are always higher than our ways. As the heavens are higher than the earth, so are my ways higher than your ways, and my thoughts than your thoughts. The Tower of Babel reminds us that we can easily confuse bigness with importance. It reminds us that we can strive for something that we think is significant, but in the process, we forget to include God in our plans. And so when our ways become more important than God's ways, we can seriously lose sight of what really matters. We begin to take pride in ourselves, and we think we're more important than we actually really are. But when God is first in our lives, we should discover that He is more important than making a name for ourselves. Number two, don't allow pride to be your downfall. Pride goes before destruction, a haughty spirit before a fall. When we begin to take credit for all the things that we do, it's so easily to become full of pride. Pride can be the downfall of many a Christian. Somebody once said to me, God can only fill those who are not filled with themselves. And I think that's very true. James tells us to humble yourself in the sight of the Lord and He will lift you up. So instead of lifting yourselves up, we need to humble ourselves and let God do the lifting. And the only way to avoid pride becoming a part of our lives, because especially with our own achievements, is to rely on what God is doing and what He's doing in our lives. And it's so much easier, isn't it, to have God to lift us up than to lift ourselves up. And if we don't humble ourselves, guess what's going to happen? God will humble us. I know what I would rather try and choose. Number three, don't get too comfortable. For this world is not our home. We are looking forward to an everlasting home in heaven. You know, when I go away for long periods of time, sometimes if I have to go to the US or something, sometimes I'm away for a month, and I could be away on my own from there. And I can always tell, about the third weekend, I'm beginning to get really homesick. You ever felt that experience? You really just want to get back home. I really want to get back home to the one I love. I want to kiss her and hug her and just be in her arms again, because I miss her so much. Do you ever feel that way about heaven? You ever feel that way? Do you get homesick for heaven? Don't you long to be with the one who made you? To kiss His feet and hug Him and thank Him for everything He's done? Let me encourage you not to get too comfortable in this world, because this world and everything in it is going to burn up one day. It really is. And to finish with, Albert Brumley wrote the hymn, This world is not my home. And look at the words. Now when you think about these words for a moment, this world is not my home. I'm just a passing through. My treasures are laid up somewhere beyond the blue. The angels beckon me from heaven's open door, and I can't feel at home in this world anymore. Do you believe that?
Mm-hmm.
you feel what's getting said? Or are they just words? Are you looking forward to your eternal home in heaven? Or are we getting a little bit too comfortable here on planet Earth? God bless you.